Now to just start this video off, I want to say this actually might be replacing my daily pour over. Today we're taking a look at the XBloom Studio, and I'm very excited about what it promises and what it can give you in your cup, as well as in your morning ritual of creating your cup of coffee. I'm actually on the advisory board for this company. I made a video a year ago with the original XBloom, and now this is an updated version. I was originally just consulting on it about 3 or so years ago, and it turned into me coming on the advisory board because they listen to a lot of the things that I advised them on, and they've taken even more of the original things that I told them to do and have implemented into this new version. So it's not like I'm just plastering my name on a product for the sake of it. This literally has a lot of the things that I asked for. If you're unfamiliar with it, it is simply a pod machine. Now, before you freak out and you're like, oh my God, a pod machine, you're reviewing a pod machine, it is kind of a new gen of pod machines. Pods that you can get that you don't have to get because there is a reusable dripper, but the pods you can buy are made of sugarcane and bamboo. Put the pod here, which acts as the pour over device itself, and it brews your cup of coffee without you having to do anything at all. And although they went away from the aluminum shell of the original one, which was a bit more premium, a bit more expensive, and they went to a polycarbonate type of shell, they did not mince any money when they were making these knobs. The knobs have this beautiful, like, knurled metal finish, and they are incredible to feel and to click. And what they also included that I was begging for early on is the grinder can now act as a standalone grinder. The water can act as standalone water. And now they have a scale built into the tray, which can act as a standalone tray. Of course, you can have them all together, but that is a huge thing that I was really excited to see. Right here, we have a grinder. Inside it, it has a long rod with 3 different bearings on it. And this is something I specifically requested in the first development to ensure for as perfect of alignment as possible during that grinding. Now you might be wondering, well, why do you have cone burrs instead of flat burrs? Lance, you're a flat burr freak. Yes, it's true. But there are some grinders with these 48mm burrs that can do a great job for filter coffee. We have stepped down the motor even more to increase the torque even more powerfully. And the RPM range, you heard right, range is 60 to 120. 120 is about what you would do with hand grinding, but this can go all the way down to 60. And as I show in this video here about slow feeding, there can be a bit more clarity achieved through slow feeding a grinder. So the idea is to give you a little bit of control over the manipulation of that particle size distribution to further tailor in your coffee experience. Of course, you don't have to do that, but this is for the nerds out there. We are able to get incredibly high torque, allowing us to introduce a new feature on this, which is espresso. Yes, it can do espresso, and in fact, it now has 80 different dialing points that you can play around with, all the way up to really coarse cold brew, all the way down to choking out a Weber unifilter basket on an espresso machine. Every single click accounts for 18.75 microns of vertical burr movement. That's important to understand. It's not burr gap. Because of the way that Comandante has communicated their burr movement, people think in terms of burr gap, but that is actually a much different measurement than vertical burr movement because of the geometry of the cones. So 18.75 microns of vertical burr movement is actually like 11 or 12 microns of burr gap. More than adequate enough for espresso dialing in. This is obviously not made for that, but you get that really granular ability to change around and mess around with your pour overs. Inside the grinder chamber is nylon reinforced with fiberglass, so it's very rigid in order to allow for that heavy torque that's being applied to the beans. Now, I have yet to stall anything even at the finest grind setting with really lightly roasted coffees, so it's kind of a great all-around burr that will accentuate light roasts really well, which was a goal of mine, and that's why we went with that heptagonal burr to begin with, is it has a slower feeding rate than something like a hexagonal or pentagonal, which are typical for darker roasted coffees. But of course, you can always up the RPM with the dark roasted coffees, produce a bit more fines, and you can have a bit more bold of a cup. The anti-static measures that are now in place are even more effective than before. So not only is there now an added deionizer inside, but they have taken into account the coatings and what materials they put near the grinder in order to lessen the static even more. It was no secret that on the original XBloom, there was a lot of static buildup whenever you would put over that reusable pod that I requested them to make. And because of that, it was very off-putting for a lot of people. They were like, I need to use RDT on this. That was supposed to be a draw, is no RDT. Well, now they have fixed that with the brand new Brewer. This is definitely more in line of what I was hoping with the original generation of the Brewer, but now they've actually done it and it is absolutely incredible. So some of this is because the material on this Brewer has been infused with carbon nanotubes in order to perform an even higher ability for anti-static measures. Originally, they had the scale built into the arm right here that slides back and forth from the water spout to the grinder whenever it's doing its full process. And so I don't see that being as accurate as having something down here. They've gone away from that piezo electrical diode type of situation for water bending. When you had four kind of in a little square shape and water going through it, you could kind of bend the water using that electrical force. But there were a lot of issues with consistency, at least in my testing. And it also really lowered the potential flow rate you could have, which is something I kept pushing them on and kept pushing them on. So now they've actually moved to a mechanical nozzle on here, which is going to give you much more predictable patterns, but also you can increase the flow rate up to about 3.5 milliliters a second, which is much better than what it was before, giving you a lot more agitation in the coffee bed itself. The tank can do 3 different pour-overs, 3 cups of coffee, whereas the original one could only do about 2. But what's really nice is the capability of plumbing in and having the built-in pump. You could actually take a jug of water and pipe it into this, and there's a pump inside that will draw the water up automatically. Now what that means, of course, is if you're using a pressurized water source, you're going to need to buy the pressure regulator that they sell on their website and include that so that the pressure coming in with another pump isn't going to mess things up. You could use the tank for specific water chemistries and have a static water chemistry in a jug, and whenever you want to use the tank, you just have to toggle to the tank as opposed to the tap, which is a very easy toggling system, takes a few seconds, and boom, now you're drawing water from the tank. We got the 100-gram calibration weight from Akaya. We got the Lunar right here, which is kind of like a standard in the industry, to see if this is actually similar. So we're going to look at response time. We're going to look at how calibrated it is. So on the corner, 100.0, front corner, 100.0, back corner, 100.0, front corner, 100.0, middle, 100.0. So let's check out what the calibration is on this scale. So we got the 100-gram weight right in the middle. 100.1, front right, 100.1, front left, 100.1, back left, 100.1, back right, 100.0. So it's a little teeny tiny bit, not as consistent, not as good all over the face, but again, it's a lot bigger area, and we have this piece that's sitting on top of the actual scale, which is here. I mean, that's absolutely more than good enough for you to do filter coffee and to weigh out things. Like, that is very quick, very fast responsive time, and pretty accurate. Next, we're gonna test some water temperatures. This is actually pretty hard to do without scalding myself, but I do it for the science and I do it for you, so let's do this. I'm gonna just take this off, I'm gonna let water run into the decanter, and we're gonna just set a temperature, and we're gonna see what it reads coming out of the spout. Let's put it all the way up to 95, why not? So we'll do that, and let's make sure it's a center pour to make it easier on me. All right, so I'm gonna take the Fluke. We're at like 89 to 90. It's going up 90.6, 9.7, 9.9. There we go. The more I can get it in there, yeah, it's right at 90. So when it says 95, there's actually, it seems to be a 5-degree temp loss. Let's see that again. Don't burn myself. Ah, it burned me! So it seems like there's a 5-degree difference there. So let's see if that's consistent. Let's go down to, I don't know, let's go down to 85. And if it's at 80, then we can know it's a pretty solid 5-degree difference. Otherwise, it might be kind of scaling. Who knows? We're going to see what happens here. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy up inside. All right, so we got it going, and we're actually at 84 for this one. It's really hard to get a really stable reading because of how this is, obviously. I'm just shoving a thermoprobe in a stream of water, but I was able to get 83 there. So I'm gonna try 95 one more time, see if maybe I found a better place to put the probe, but let's try that one more time. And here we go. Last try, last try. All right, so yes, we're definitely over 90. I just didn't have it in a good spot earlier. Okay, we hit 92. That's good enough for me. Ouch! What'd I do for you guys? Love me, say that you love me, I hurt my... They actually have a sensor inside, so it knows when it's at elevation, it knows what boiling point it's at, and it always will dispense water or heat water up to 2 degrees less than boiling point, so you don't have sputtering water coming out of the spout. This is an incredibly intelligent system that has the capability of measuring the flow coming out, which is very, very consistent within about a gram of your desired dose. And it has a scale built in. So when you're tracking the brew on your phone, you see both the flow rate as well as the scale, what's being dropped into the kettle from the brewer, which is a really cool visualization and gives you a bit more to kind of look at as far as data goes. They actually have algorithms built in based off of the flow and the scale. And it knows if not enough is on the scale based off of the dose inside the pod, it knows when it's being filled up too much. So when you get your XBloom, you'll get this little ring, which is what holds the pods. So if you get into their system where you get their pods on subscription, you stick it in, you put the pod in, you click go, and it zzz, comes over, grinds into it, zzz, comes back over, and it starts the pour over process. But I've also found that you can take this and you can take something like the S-Works dripper, you can kind of disconnect it like so, and boom, now we have the S-Works dripper that we can use on here. You can obviously use whatever dripper you want. Just put it on the scale and you're good to go. It's gonna weigh, it's gonna use the flow reading system, and you're gonna be able to do any type of pour over that you want. Granted, the maximum is going to be a 25 gram dose, if you're wanting to a typical ratio, just because it's not going to be able to expend too much water over it, and the tank's only so big, the capability is only so much. And then with this, the max dose you can do is about 18 grams. This is not a batch brewer, it is a single cup brewer that does incredibly high quality brews. They actually give you this nice catch cup, which is also anti-static coated, and it has magnets that fit right here. So if you want to use this as a standalone grinder for espresso or for another brew method or whatever you're wanting to do, you can grind straight into this. Or if you want to do the trendy little shake, you can do that as well. So this fits on 58 millimeter portafilters. Bada boom, it's magnetic. We can put that on just like so, and it fits perfectly into the AirPress. And that'd be remiss not to point out that my boy Kimoy is actually making a 3D printed smusher for this. So similar to the smusher you would use for like an Orea, there's gonna be one if you wanna smush in the paper filter here. I'm sure this will work fine. I don't really feel like smushing this paper because I have this dialed in to include that bypass, so we're not gonna do that for this brew. So when we activate the screen, we see 3 different options. We have the grinder, which it just shows like grounds falling. We have water, a little water droplet, and we have the scale, which is that's like a little weight. So if we want to get some water out on it, we're just going to click the water spot, the water drop, and then this shows us whichever pour pattern we want. Do we want center pour, which shows crosshairs? Do we want a circle pour or a spiral pour? Then in the middle, we can change our temperature. Coolest it gets is what, 40? Yep, and then it goes to room temperature water. So let's just put it at, 90. You can use this for like tea. If you want to just use the water spout, you can use this for a predetermined temperature and you can fill up your tea. So we're just wetting the filter a bit. I'm just gonna stop it. You can click it, click any button, it's gonna stop it. I was telling them, as cool as like an app is, in order to change some features, it would be just of paramount importance to have some sort of tactile capability to manually change some of the settings. So now we need to weigh our beans. So I'm gonna take the scale, click it. I need to get 15 grams. Oh, went a little over, so let's just pull some out. See how responsive that is? Super responsive, very nice, very nice. I'm gonna exit out of that scale, and now we're back to our original screen. Now you can set this up for NFC to kind of tap, and it will bring up your recipes and whatnot. I have my NFC disabled because it annoys me when I'm at places and it accidentally tries to pay all the time. It annoys me. All right, so I open the app, and there we have Fancy Lancy Covfefe. I click on Recipe IO, and there we see my 1-to-1 recipe, which I created, This is my 1-to-1. So as you see, it's 1-to-17, so 15 grams in, 255 grams of water, 63 grind size, pretty coarse, but I like to play the game. I also have a 60 degree Celsius bloom on here, the Samo bloom, and I have it as kind of like a small, like kind of spiral pour, and then a 210 gram 95 degree pour. So what I'm gonna do is dump these beans into the little slot. There we are, no RDT needed. All we gotta do is click start, and then it's gonna say, you sure you did everything right? you sure about that? And I say, let's go. Vamschla. Not too loud, not too quiet. It takes about 1 gram a second, about 15 seconds for the grind. It's at 120 RPM. Now, they are working on a firmware update to where you can control the RPM in your recipes. Currently, you can only control RPM when it's a standalone grinder, but soon you will be able to set a recipe with a certain RPM if that's your flavor. So right there, it was 120 RPM. I have it to shake to kind of settle the bed. So before you see the little shaking, that was also, something I kind of pushed for, a little agitation. And they did it on Gen 1 as well. But then we have the bloom coming out. And as you see, we're dispensing water here and it's showing the water dispensed. And then on the actual phone, on the app, you see what's being weighed by the scale. I also have a post-bloom shake to kind of level the bed and try to make sure it's all nice and saturated. So we're gonna let that sit for a bit. It's gonna sit for about a minute before it kind of continues. The stream does break up before the bed, so it kind of has that droplet thing, which I'm not stoked on, but that's as high of a flow rate as they could get. And I've noticed it still makes really good brew, still extracts really nicely. But as you see, there we go. We've filled it up and now it's shaking to level that bed out as we do the final drawdown. Dum, ba-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. We have our nice bed right there, nice and flat as we would expect. Ba-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. Ba-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. Ba-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. I made splatters everywhere, but it is what it is. Fantastic. And so easy. I could have just done that, ran inside, wrote a symphony, and then come back and it'd be done. So I've got 19.3 grams dose of a lightly roasted washed Kenya coffee, and I'm gonna put it into the grinder. Let's see where we're gonna be at. I have the Swarks design basket in here, so it requires a very fine grind. So actually, we'll try 5 and see what happens with that. I'm gonna open it. We're gonna do the 120 RPM, dump it in. So it's gonna be a cold start, not a hot start. All right, no RDT. Magnetize that bad boy down in there, and then here we go. It's electronically using the motor to make the burr gap smaller and smaller, very precise. Boom. So obviously with a much finer grind, it's gonna take a lot longer to grind it. If you go down to like 60 RPM, you could have an espresso grind take a little over a minute. At this RPM and this grind size, I would say maybe 45 seconds to 50 seconds. So we'll just cut it to where it's over. All right, so we're done. It's just getting the rest out, and there we are. All right, 19.23, oh, it goes up to 3. So 19.2 to 19.3, it's oscillating between the two. So that probably means about 19.25, so about 0.05 grams of retention. Let's see if there's any to be had if we use a bellows. Let's just see what happens. Okay, I think that's good. Let's see. Didn't help. All right, so here we go. I didn't dial this in. We're just guessing at 5. If it chokes, I mean, that's probably good enough, but let's see what happens at 5. Letting air escape. All right, now we're gonna do the full pre-infuse. And there we have it. Actually dialed in pretty well for a first try. And remember, these high extraction baskets are always ugly coming out. But it gave me that full pressure I was looking for. I mean, look at that. Maybe a little fast, I could go a little finer, but even still, that's pretty nice for a first try. A little, kind of turbo. It was fast enough for a turby. Let's give it a little taste. It's messy, sorry. That is good. That seems to cover just about everything with one final thing, the price point. Now this is where it gets super exciting to me. The early bird pricing, which is only gonna be consistent for when this video is launched until sometime like mid-June or something, the pricing for this will be $449 US. That's insane. So let's break down what all that means. We have a scale in here that's probably, $50 to $100 scale as far as how quality it is. We have a grinder in here. There's one on the market that is a similar style. I think this is better, but a similar style that doesn't have variable RPM and that is a higher RPM static. And honestly, it's not aligned nearly as well. That goes for about $375. So let's say that this is a $300 grinder. And then we have this smart, intelligent brewing system with the capability of being plumbed in with a built-in pump in order to have that plumbing in be as easy as possible. All of that together for $449. Mind-blowing. And for people on my Patreon, you have an extra little discount that I'll announce in there. You can go search for it if you end up joining after this. The retail price, and you heard it here first, will be $499 US. unreal that they're able to get the price down this much. It's got to be a testament to their background in working with, you know, big manufacturing companies, with Apple and different things like that, but also they had a lot of experience with the first generation of this, and now with the Studio, they're able to cut down cost quite a bit while they're introducing a lot more elements and variables to the situation. If you have the first XBloom, this is not something like, oh, I got to go sell it. The first XBloom is still fantastic, especially if you're someone that just has simple, you just want to use the pods or you just want to use a simple recipe. This is definitely the tinkerer's tool. This has everything you could want and more in order to have essentially full control over your pour over, with the exception of a faster flow rate. That would be the one big downside, is it only tops out at 3.5 grams a second. With firmware updates in the future of what they're going to be able to do, really the sky's the limit to what all will be possible. The capability of saving recipes into the machine somehow to where you can just toggle to a couple different recipes on here, similar to what the Meticulous can do, and a lot of other things are completely capable with future firmware updates, which are very easy. And with Bluetooth 5.0, I actually updated my machine while I was in bed last night. No joke. All in all, obviously I'm excited, but obviously I'm very biased. But if this is something that's interesting, if you currently don't really have a setup and you're looking to get into Pourovers, I mean, this has your grinder, your scale, and your pour over device all in one. You don't have to spend 150 on a nice gooseneck kettle, or even 70, whatever it might be. You don't need to spend 300 or so for a decent grinder, and you don't need to mess around with getting a scale. So hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you enjoyed whatever you want to take away from this video, whether it's, a little bit of the, or it's a little bit of the, oink oink here, or an oink oink for me. That's really all there is to it. But thank you for watching yet again. Thank you for finishing to the end. Remember, hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. But other than that, I hope that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.